A black billionaire, disguised as an ordinary shopper, caught a young employee with bruises quietly taking expired food. But instead of calling security, he followed her home. What he discovered broke his heart. She was a mother, trapped in an abusive marriage. The next day, he didn't lecture her. He helped. And that single act of kindness didn't just change her life, it would go on to transform his entire company. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thought. Marcus Bennett, CEO of Haven Foods, was the embodiment of success. On TV, he was cold and decisive, declaring discipline the key to all achievement. For Marcus, success wasn't just about financial figures, it was a strong armor against life's chaos, a promise he made to himself from the early days of experiencing injustice and scarcity. He believed that only fairness and clear rules could create a trustworthy world. Haven Foods, the low-cost supermarket empire he built, was a living testament to that philosophy. He prided himself on offering the best benefits, building a solid foundation where anyone with willpower could rise and achieve a stable life, free from the basic worries he once endured. But when his office door closed, the silence in the penthouse became a strange urging. The dry numbers on his screen couldn't banish a lurking unease. Marcus needed confirmation, not from reports, but from reality. He wanted to see for himself if his philosophy was truly bringing good lives to the people he trusted, like a ritual from the early days when he clung to numbers to make sense of the world. 3 hours later, Marcus quietly slipped through the back entrance of a Haven food store on the edge of the city. No entourage, no security, just him and the sterile silence of fluorescent lights. Freezers hummed, and the faint scent of floor cleaner hung in the air, the smell of his past. He walked slowly, the soft scuff of Italian leather shoes on the tiled floor. The aisles were straight, like sentries, goods symmetrically stacked, everything exuding the efficiency he preached, yet the unease persisted. At checkout lane number 4 he paused. A young woman was wiping down the conveyor belt, her cloth moving in tired circles. Emily, her name tag read. Her skin was pale, almost translucent under the harsh fluorescent light, barely in her 20s but with eyes already etched with the fatigue of long shifts. Her blonde hair, usually neatly tied back, had come loose, framing a face where exhaustion seemed deeply ingrained. She moved heavily, a kind of weariness that came from endless hours and too little rest. Marcus was about to move on, but then he froze. She reached for an item on a shelf. Her sleeve slipped, revealing a faint yellowish bruise on her wrist, near the bony knob. It wasn't obvious, but it was there, a troubling mark. She quickly pulled her sleeve down with a quiet, almost instinctive jerk, her shoulders tensing. She continued her work, her movements slow but precise, so disciplined. A feeling of sudden intense curiosity rose in Marcus. In his system, where every employee was provided the best, a bruise like this was unacceptable, an alarming anomaly. It was a crack in the perfect picture he confidently painted. The cold grip of unease tightened in his chest, a spark he hadn't felt in years, a burning concern. He needed to know what was happening. 10 minutes later, her shift ended. She drifted towards aisle number 12, where a chilled display held discounted items, perishables that hadn't sold, awaiting markdown or disposal. She paused, glancing around quickly, almost imperceptibly, then swiftly slipped 2 salad containers and half a loaf of rye bread into her faded canvas backpack, zipping it shut with practiced ease. No greed, no rush, just method, and a quiet, painful burden of shame. Marcus turned away, his jaw clenched. He needed to find out more. He needed to know why one of his employees had to resort to such stealth and why she had that bruise. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the store right after opening. No entourage, no security. He went straight to the supervisor's office, where security camera monitors glowed. His heart pounded. He scrolled back through the footage of the previous night's shift, searching for Emily. He found her at the checkout, cleaning with that familiar weariness. Then he fast-forwarded to aisle number 12. Sure enough, she furtively took the expired salads and bread. A faint frown creased his face, but then something else appeared on the screen. After putting the items in her backpack, Emily didn't go straight for the exit. She stopped at the bakery section, where an elderly man was struggling with a trolley laden with unsold loaves. He looked tired, and his back seemed to ache. Emily approached him, a small smile on her face. She offered a few encouraging words, then without hesitation, began helping him stack the heavy bread trays onto the trolley. Her movements were quick, her hands deftly arranging the loaves, occasionally adjusting his cap. Her gesture was unadorned, seeking no praise, just pure assistance. She even helped him push the trolley to the dumpster area before turning and heading straight out. Marcus stared at the screen, a strange feeling stirring within him. Not simple sympathy, but respect. This wasn't someone just looking out for herself and her family. This was a woman with kindness in her heart, ready to help others even while struggling herself. She wasn't just a rule breaker, she was a decent, strong person, a person of dignity. The bruise on her wrist, the fear in her child's eyes, and now that quiet act of goodness, it all connected, forming a complex picture he had missed. He turned off the camera monitor. The data had spoken, and so had his heart. Night clung to Marcus. In a beige rental sedan, under an assumed name, he sat still as the city drifted to sleep. He was in a worn hoodie, the scent of old bleach and exhaustion from a nearby laundromat lingering in the air. This neighborhood was familiar, echoing the struggle he knew. He followed the bus at a distance, its soft hum his only companion. Emily had boarded earlier, moving like a shadow. The bus stopped. Emily stepped off, her worn coat torn, her backpack heavy but neat. She moved with purpose, disappearing into a brick apartment complex. Marcus stared at the building. A faint light illuminated an upstairs window, where Emily's silhouette appeared, tired but purposeful. He waited. Night birds chirped in the quiet air, then a soft sound from the ground floor door. A thin boy, Ben, about 6 or 7 years old, peeked out, his eyes bright. He saw Emily. "Mom," Ben whispered, a wide grin stretching across his face. He ran towards her, oblivious to the heavy backpack slung over her shoulder. Emily smiled tiredly, but genuinely. She bent down to hug her son, Ben clinging tightly to her. She opened her backpack, pulling out the expired salad containers. "Look, Ben," she said softly, a simple joy in her voice. "Salad, and bread I brought for you." Ben cheered with delight, his eyes lighting up in the dim light. "Awesome, thank you, Mom." He took the salad containers as if they were treasure, clutching them to his chest. "Sophie will love these." A faint smile touched Emily's face, but it vanished instantly. The door suddenly burst open harder, and a large, bearded man, looking drunk, stumbled out. He was a big man, reeking of stale alcohol and simmering rage. "What is this, you bitch?" he snarled, his rough hand grabbing Emily's wrist. "Lying to me to bring back this garbage." He yanked the backpack from her shoulder. The salad containers and half a loaf of rye bread fell and rolled on the damp, muddy ground. Ben whimpered in fear. Emily cringed, tears welling in her eyes. "No, this is food for the kids. They haven't eaten all day." He sneered, his face contorted in the shadows. "Eat what? I told them not to eat. Do they deserve to eat when you're doing sneaky things behind my back?" He turned, glaring at the cowering Ben. "Shut up," he roared. "No, don't touch my son." Emily screamed, lunging to shield her child. He spun back, his eyes full of violent intent fixed on her. "You dare argue with me, you dog." He raised his hand, preparing to deliver a powerful slap to Emily's face, where fresh swelling was already visible. Her lip was slightly swollen, clearly a fresh sign of violence. Marcus was out of his car. He was no longer the cold, calculating CEO. Emily's scream, the terror in the child's eyes, and the unfolding violence shattered his calm facade. A deep, primal rage ignited fiercely, burning away all logic and caution. He couldn't be a passive observer again. The helplessness he felt as a child, watching his own mother endure similar abuse, surged back, demanding action. This time, he had to act. He lunged without thinking. There was only one instinct to stop it. As the man's brutal hand was about to connect with Emily's face, Marcus was there. He seized his arm, twisting it sharply behind his back, forcing him painfully to his knees. The man roared in pain, his eyes wide with fury and surprise. "Who the hell are you?" he gritted, trying to struggle. Marcus didn't answer. He held him tight, his gaze cold and full of loathing. "Get out, and never show your face near her and her children again." The man still struggled, his face red with anger, but then his phone rang insistently in his pocket. He glanced at the phone, then at Marcus, frustration and a flicker of fear in his eyes, then quickly scrambled away, his heavy footsteps echoing down the alley. Marcus watched his retreating figure disappear into the darkness, then turned back to Emily and Ben. Emily was still trembling, clutching Ben tightly, both looking at him with a mixture of fear and astonishment. Marcus said nothing about the fallen salad and bread. He quickly walked to his car, pulled out a leather wallet. He handed a few large bills to Ben. "Go to the convenience store nearby, and buy something for you and your sister to eat, anything you want." He gently ruffled Ben's hair. "Don't worry, everything will be okay." His voice was gentle, unlike his usual authoritative tone. He looked at Emily, his eyes full of compassion. "Are you all right?" Emily shook her head, her eyes still teary but gleaming with gratitude. I'm fine, thank you. You saved us." Marcus simply nodded slightly. "It's nothing, don't worry." He gently patted Ben's head. "Go inside now, it's cold." He stepped back, giving them space. Emily took Ben's hand, pulling him inside. Before closing the door, she turned back, looking at Marcus one more time with profound gratitude, as if still unable to believe what had just happened. Marcus just gave her a reassuring nod, then turned and left the alley to its quiet. He didn't go straight home, not exactly. He drove for a while, letting the blurred streetlights streak past his windshield. The worn sedan felt more real than his Mercedes. When he finally pulled into his building's underground garage, the city had long been silent. The elevators whirred, lights flicking on with motion sensors, but Marcus wasn't in a hurry. His footsteps echoed in the hallway. Inside his penthouse, everything was still in its place. Perfect, expensive, cold. He poured a finger of bourbon into a glass, needing something warm to hold. He sat on the edge of the sofa, staring at the bourbon, watching the ice melt slowly. The silence pressed against his ears. His mind replayed Emily's tired face, her quiet movements, the small desperate act of taking things that would have been thrown away. And then, the image of her abusive husband, the shouts, and the cowering children. The pain Emily endured, raw and immediate, ripped through Marcus's carefully constructed detachment, tearing at old wounds. He remembered his mother's suffering. He had been helpless then. Now, facing Emily, he saw his mother's image. The helplessness of the past burned with rage, transforming into an iron resolve. He would not let that happen again. He couldn't. She didn't beg for help. She didn't steal out of greed. She gave what little she had, and she was being brutally hurt. The weight of it, the colossal blind spot in his meticulously built empire, crashed down on him. This wasn't just a loophole in the system. This was a failure of leadership, a failure of humanity. That night, Marcus didn't just drive home. He picked up his phone and called Sarah. "Sarah," he said when his assistant answered, her voice thick with sleep. His tone was sharper than usual, crisp with an intensity that snapped her awake. "I need you to find out everything you can about Emily Carter, not just her HR file, about who she is, about her capabilities. Everything. Specifically, I need a detailed report on any legal records pertaining to her current or former husband, including a history of domestic violence if any." Kim Ao. There was a pause. "Do you want HR too?" "No," he said, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "This is top secret. I need to know how good she really is. And Sarah, run a background check on any men in her family. Discreetly, I need to know." Marcus hung up, leaving Sarah with a daunting task, but Sarah, with her professionalism and years of working for Marcus, understood this wasn't just a job request. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the office windows, a stack of files lay on Marcus's desk. Sarah stood there, her face still bearing signs of fatigue, but her eyes full of worry, as if she had been up all night completing this impossible mission. "Here's what I found about Emily Carter, sir," Sarah began, her voice lower than usual. "She's an exemplary employee, always excelling at her tasks, even if it means working very late. Her performance record is excellent, and many managers have noted her meticulousness and reliability." Sarah paused, then gently pushed a thinner file towards Marcus. "But this is the harder part." Marcus slowly opened the file. Sarah's report was chillingly detailed. Emily Carter, a single mother, she had divorced 3 years ago. Her ex-husband, an alcoholic and gambler, had a record of assault and public disturbance. His name was Jack. He frequently harassed and threatened Emily for money, especially when drunk. There were reports of Emily being hospitalized for unexplained injuries. The full record of domestic violence incidents was clearly listed: late-night police calls, instances where Emily refused to press charges for fear of her children's safety, and futile restraining orders. "She tried so hard to protect her children," Sarah said softly, her voice full of empathy, "but he wouldn't let go. He always found a way to cause trouble, to ruin her life, and even threaten the kids. She works tirelessly, picking up every possible shift to try and raise her 2 young children, Ben and Sophie, on her own. Their living conditions are very difficult, a dilapidated rental apartment, and they are always in need." Marcus gripped the file, his hand trembled slightly. The numbers, the dry data, now appeared clearer, more real than ever. This was no longer an employee who violated rules. This was a resilient woman living in hell, struggling every day to survive and protect her children from a miserable, violent life. The harsh truth of Emily's life had slammed into Marcus's consciousness, exceeding any profit reports or market figures. Her suffering, the helplessness she endured, again touched his own past pain. He looked up at Sarah, his eyes filled with determination. "Sarah, arrange a private meeting with Emily immediately, as soon as possible. I want to see her, no one else is to be present." Marcus walked into the break room. The scent of stale coffee and something microwaved lingered in the air. He stood silently in the doorway, waiting. 5 minutes later, Emily entered, then froze. Her eyes widened, then they fixed on the laptop on the table. The screen still displayed the paused security camera footage. Aisle 12, last night, her silhouette furtively reaching into the discounted cooler. Her face was even paler than yesterday. A faint new swelling beneath her left eye and a small cut running along the corner of her lip. Her face went ashen. She gripped her canvas backpack tightly, her knuckles white. A flicker of defiance, then resignation, crossed her features. "Mr. Bennett," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper, "I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to." She glanced at the laptop, fear rising within her at the thought that he knew about her taking the discarded food. Suddenly her gaze met Marcus's face. She stared at him. She had seen this face countless times on television, in business magazines, but now, there were no studio lights or heavy makeup. It was the man who had helped her last night. The same eyes, the same calm demeanor. Shock flooded Emily. She took a step back, hitting the wall, her backpack slipping from her grasp, falling to the floor. She gasped, but no sound escaped. Her entire body froze in astonishment and profound shame. The famous CEO, the man she always saw on TV, was the very one who had witnessed her most vulnerable and painful moments. Marcus saw the sudden shift in her eyes, from fear and shame to utter horror. He realized she had recognized him. "Sit down," Marcus said, his voice initially a little cold, carrying the usual authority of a CEO assessing a situation. "We need to talk." Emily sat down slowly, her posture stiff, her hands gripping the edge of the table, her eyes never leaving Marcus, as if he were an illusion that might vanish at any moment. Her eyes, though wide with fear and shame, still held a stubborn dignity. Marcus looked directly at her, his gaze unyielding. "I'm not here to fire you for the food." He paused, and a softer note entered his voice as he remembered the scene of her helping the baker. "I saw what you did, Emily, and I know why, and I know about the other things. The bruise on your wrist, the fear in your children's eyes, and the cut on your lip. I saw him, Emily. He will never hurt you or your children again." His voice deepened, thick with barely restrained fury and a steadfast promise. "No one deserves to live like that. No one deserves to be abused, especially those who work hard and dedicate themselves like you." She gasped, a choked sound escaping, but he held up a hand. "You don't have to explain," he added. "I'm not here for that. I'm here because my company, the one I built, failed to protect you. And it allowed someone else to hurt you." There was a long pause, the kind of pause that only happens when both people are deciding whether to tell the truth or retreat into habit. Marcus was the first to break it. "When I was your age," he began, his voice softer, almost a whisper, "my mother worked 2 cleaning jobs. Sometimes she'd bring leftover food from the hospital cafeteria and tell me she wasn't hungry. I believed her. He looked away, his gaze fixed on a coffee stain on the table. And I promised myself I'd build a life where no one I cared about would have to lie like that. Where they'd be safe. I know the helplessness of watching someone you love get hurt. I was in Ben's position, Emily, when my own mother suffered abuse from my father. He looked back at her, his eyes conveying a deep shared understanding. Emily didn't say anything, but something in her shoulders softened. She wasn't being interrogated, she was being seen. Not just the theft but the person beneath it, the pain she endured. I built Haven Foods on numbers, he continued, his voice regaining some of its usual strength, but now laced with humility and a fresh anger. Profit margins, efficiency, loyalty metrics. But I forgot to measure what truly matters. I forgot the human cost. I built a system that created conditions where good people, desperate people, were left vulnerable to poverty, to violence. He looked at her now, truly looked at her, not as a name on an HR file, not as a security risk, but as a person who had fought to exist with dignity and to protect her children. In the face of immense adversity, he saw his mother in her tired strength. He saw himself, the boy who promised to make things better, confronting the man who let things get worse. Marcus had absolutely no idea about Emily's talent or formal education at this point. He was simply acting on a surge of conscience and kindness. "I'm not offering you charity," he said. "You don't need it, you need safety, you need support, and my company will provide that. I will help you get away from that man." Emily looked at Marcus, her eyes brimming with tears. She had tried to be strong for so long, but his words, this unexpected understanding, melted her resilient facade. She trembled slightly, then tears streamed down her cheeks. Not tears of weakness, but tears of relief, of a fragile hope. She broke down. "I don't know what to say," she choked out. "I've never had anyone help me like this." Marcus gently nodded. "You don't have to say anything, just know that you and your children will be safe." He picked up the phone, immediately calling his assistant Sarah, his voice still calm but full of authority. "Sarah, I need you to contact our top family lawyer right away. Arrange a meeting immediately, as soon as possible, and find Emily Carter a safe, discreet apartment, top priority. She and her children need a place to start over." Sarah, on the other end of the line, seemed to sense the urgency and gravity in her boss's voice. She asked no further questions. She simply confirmed and got to work. Marcus turned back to Emily. "We'll take this one step at a time. You won't be alone." Marcus's decisions quickly created shockwaves. He faced fierce opposition from the board of directors and major shareholders. Haven Foods stock began to dip slightly as market analysts questioned Marcus's peculiar strategic shift. "You're turning a business into a charity," one major shareholder yelled over the phone, his voice filled with anger and disappointment. But that wasn't all. Emily's ex-husband, that wretched man, refused to give up. He was bitter about being defeated by Marcus and losing control over Emily. He began spreading toxic rumors on online forums, social media, and even sent anonymous letters to tabloids. He accused Marcus Bennett, the wealthy CEO, of seducing married women and specifically his own employees. He fabricated distorted stories about Marcus interfering in other people's family matters and exploiting Emily's difficult circumstances for personal gain. Tabloids quickly latched onto the story. Sensational headlines appeared. CEO Haven Foods accused of abusing power, seducing employee, Marcus Bennett's dark secret. Marcus's image on television, once a symbol of trustworthiness, was now distorted, covered in a layer of suspicion and filth. Rival companies began launching subtle advertising campaigns, implying Haven Foods was not an ethical workplace. Marcus's reputation, built over his entire life, was seriously threatened. Friends turned away. Some close business partners also distanced themselves. He maintained a strategic silence about Emily and the specifics of the incident, making only general statements about ensuring a safe work environment and supporting employees. He didn't want information about Emily's private life further exposed. This was the price of kindness, of intervention. Marcus was trading his reputation, his career, and even his amassed fortune to protect a woman he barely knew. He was fighting on multiple fronts at once, bearing immense pressure alone. Despite facing the public storm, Marcus remained unyielding. He and his legal team acted swiftly. An emergency restraining order was issued based on evidence of violent behavior and Marcus's testimony. Concurrently, a fast-track divorce filing aimed to secure full custody for Emily and a clear verdict for the abusive behavior. The man, after receiving court summons and a police warning, no longer dared to appear near Emily and her children. The legal battle would undoubtedly be long, with potential retaliatory moves, but Marcus ensured that Emily and her children would be protected throughout the process, with continuous legal and security support. He also arranged a safe, modest apartment for Emily and her children, a place where she could start anew without fear of retaliation. Regarding the rumors and media accusations, Marcus initially chose strategic silence. However, realizing silence could be misinterpreted as tacit admission, he prepared a comprehensive communication strategy. He held a discreet press briefing with a few reputable journalists, providing indirect evidence of his humanitarian intervention without revealing sensitive details about Emily's private life. He also issued a strong statement through the company's legal department, refuting all baseless accusations and emphasizing Haven Foods' commitment to business ethics and employee welfare. He believed that time and Emily's future contributions would be the best answer. After settling into her new life and ensuring her safety, Emily contacted Marcus. She didn't just want to express her gratitude, she also wanted to share something she had kept to herself for a long time, her findings about gaps and flaws in Haven Foods' operational system. In a private meeting at Marcus's office, Emily showed no signs of her previous timidity or fear. She had thoroughly prepared a document, including charts, figures, and detailed analyses. "Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice much more confident, "after getting settled, I reviewed my notes from my time working at the store, and I realized there are some really important things I think the company is overlooking." She presented fluently and precisely. "Our customer traffic in the afternoon after 3 p.m. significantly drops, but we still maintain the same number of checkout staff as during midday peak hours. This causes wasted labor and unnecessary overtime costs." She pointed to a self-drawn chart, with sharp lines. "That's the first loophole. The second loophole is about inventory management for fresh produce. The percentage of discarded items is too high, especially at the end of the day, because we don't have an accurate demand forecasting system and a more flexible markdown policy." Marcus listened attentively, his eyes wide with surprise. Her analyses were not only accurate, but delved into details that quarterly financial reports often overlooked. She didn't just see numbers, she saw patterns and underlying causes. "You did all this yourself?" Marcus asked, unable to hide his astonishment. "Yes, sir," Emily said, a slight smile appearing on her face. "I have some experience with figures. I studied accounting, but I never completed my degree. However, while working, I learned a lot by observing the flow of operations and reading online articles about efficiency. After you helped me, I also took some online courses in data analysis and business operations to formalize what I was seeing. It's just a habit." She pointed to the paper. "This is the number of transactions by hour. I tracked them for the past 2 weeks. And this," she traced a few numbers along the margin, "this is when most of our shifts overlap, even when customer volume low. We're overstaffed in the mid-afternoon and understaffed during evening peak hours. If we adjust schedules to match actual customer traffic, we could reduce unnecessary overtime and cover peak hours without overworking anyone." She paused, then added, more softly, a hint of vulnerability in her tone, "It's not perfect, but it could save thousands of dollars a year. Maybe more." I wasn't sure who to tell. Marcus stared at that chart, then looked back at her, as if truly seeing her for the first time. The numbers on that paper, scribbled in pencil, were astonishingly accurate and logical. This was the kind of sharp analysis he paid millions of dollars for from consultants. But this came from a deeper place, from someone living within the system, not just observing it. Marcus immediately saw Emily's potential. He offered full financial support for Emily to complete her accounting degree, with the promise of a well-deserved position in the finance or data analysis department of Haven Foods after graduation. Emily didn't miss this opportunity. She studied diligently, balancing her academics with caring for her children in their new safe environment. 2 years later, Emily Carter returned to Haven Foods. No longer the tired cashier, she was a confident financial data analyst with an excellent degree and valuable practical experience from her days working in the store. Emily's return was an unexpected sweet reward. She quickly applied her knowledge and findings to optimize work schedules, minimize inventory waste, and significantly improve the operational efficiency of the stores. Her proposals, based on real data and a deep understanding of retail operations, saved Haven Foods millions of dollars annually, far exceeding even the numbers Marcus and Sarah had initially projected. Emily's contributions strongly solidified Marcus's position and proved the value of the welfare policies he had steadfastly implemented. 3 days later, he stood before the board, the Navy folder in his hand heavier than any presentation. He had additional numbers from Emily, numbers that spoke volumes. The room was cold, the faces around the table a mix of skepticism, impatience, and thinly veiled disdain. Peterson, a long-serving board member with eyes like flint, cleared his throat. "This isn't about generosity," Marcus began, his voice calm, echoing through the tense silence. "This is about survival, and about recognizing the raw diamonds we're missing." He presented Emily's analyses, emphasizing the immense financial benefits from optimizing processes. He then presented a strategic plan to leverage the company's improved ethical standing as a competitive advantage, highlighting how a focus on employee welfare could attract better talent and build stronger customer loyalty. He used Emily's story, without revealing personal details, as an example of untapped potential within their own ranks. Despite still facing some whispers about conspiracy theories and tainted reputation, the numbers Emily brought spoke for themselves, bolstered by Marcus's compelling vision for a more ethical and profitable future. It wasn't just about humanity, but real business efficiency and market advantage. Ultimately, the board, seeing the undeniable financial gains and long-term strategic benefits, had to reluctantly approve Marcus's proposals. Haven Foods had changed. It became a new model in the retail industry, a company that not only focused on profit but also cared deeply about the welfare and potential of its employees. And Marcus Bennett, though bearing the scars of his reputational battle, became a respected leader not just for his business acumen but for his courage and vision that extended beyond mere numbers. The journey to truly embed this new ethos would be long, fraught with challenges, and constantly evolving, but the first decisive steps had been taken.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.